On Friday, the Supreme Court delivered an incredible victory for parental rights activists in a case called Mahmoud versus Taylor, centered around a case that happened where I live in Montgomery County, Maryland. I've been covering this case for 2 years since I accidentally drove by a protest outside of the school board in the summer of 2023. And centers around the idea that parents should have the right to opt their children out of LGBTQ books that are anything about gender and sexuality, not necessarily LGBTQ. So there was a group of parents who were majority Muslim, most of them immigrants. There was also a lot of Ethiopian Christians who, at the bottom of an email that they got from the school district, were notified that they would no longer be allowed to opt their children out of books that they believed violated their religious rights. And so at first they approached the school board and they said, "Hey guys, this is a violation of our religious beliefs." And they were met with silence. They were totally ignored. And so then they started protesting outside of the school board meetings. Simultaneous to their decision to protest, they filed a lawsuit. They lost it at both the district level and then again at the next level. And they appealed to the Supreme Court. And at that point, Beckett law firm decided to take their case for them and brought it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court accepted the case. And oral arguments happened in April, and it was a really fascinating conversation. And even Alana Kagan said, even parents who aren't religious might object to this content. But the content was objectionable on its face, religious or not. There was one book called Born Ready that focused on a transgender child. And the brother of that child said, this doesn't make sense. You can't just become a boy. And the mom chided him and said, "Well, this isn't about making sense. This is about love." Implication being, if you don't believe that someone can change their gender, you're not a loving person. Another one of the books that was actually for the kindergarten age was called Pride Puppy. These books are just not well written and not well illustrated. They're not terribly engaging. But what was really telling was at the end of the book, they had a word search. And so there were words at the back of the book, and you can look for those pictures in the book. This is for kindergarten age. Some of the words that you could search for in the book were drag king, drag queen, lace, leather, I think was in there, high heels, insulin pump. These are not topics that I think the vast, vast majority of parents of kindergarten age kids would feel comfortable with their kids learning. So now, sort of after this Supreme Court decision, we're going to see how does the county handle this. And the county, in their first initial email to parents and staff afterwards, said that it made it more difficult for them to foster an inclusive and welcoming environment for students. It didn't. It just made it more difficult for them to promote their own agenda. But for these families who were religious, who didn't have any options because they were mostly immigrants and lower class people who didn't have the luxury of going to private school or homeschooling. And that's something that Samuel Alito, in his majority opinion, said that, you can't deny people a public benefit because of their religious beliefs. And so it was on that basis that the Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, voted in favor of these parents.